Welcome ladies and gentlemen to my 40k channel. Today's video is going to be on painting an Imperial Knight, specifically in House Griffith's colors. These models are more of a battle ready or tabletop standard with almost no highlighting save for the actual skeleton or the arms. With that being the case, there's only going to be about 13 colors used, 2 of them being primers. Let's get started. The first main color laid down is going to be Screaming Skull, and this is going to be on all of the armored panels. Now, we want these areas painted first, simply because later on when we paint some red, that, well, at least for my case, I'm using an airbrush, so I'm going to have some blue painter's tape to cover up the areas that we're painting now, and I don't want the painter's tape ripping up that paint. I need it nice and dry, so I'm going to paint it now so that way it has more time to dry by the time I get to that step. As for primers, I don't have any videos for those for this tutorial. However, just to simply get it out of the way, Vellejo Black on the body as well as the arms, and Vellejo Grey on all of the armored panels. Next color is Caledor Sky for the remaining panels. You can do these colors by brush if you really want, but I find that the airbrush here really comes into its own because it allows you to have a nice, very flat and smooth panel compared to using a brush where you're going to have some brush strokes. Then we're going to do Warplock Bronze over the body as well as the arms. Don't have to be neat, just cover the entire model. Staying on the body for now, hit up the entire body as well as the arms with a heavy dry brush of Leadbelcher. Again, no need to be neat here. What we're doing is a simple dry brush to hit up all of those highlights, and we can be nice and heavy and messy with this because the next step is going to largely negate all of the messiness. So that step is going to be Nuln oil. You're going to do a Nuln oil wash over all of the body as well as all of the arms, and you're going to give it a lot of time to dry, probably like 20 to 30 minutes. And specifically for the arms, make sure that you prop them up in such a way so that way the wash pools in the areas that you want it to pool in and not, like, say, over some flat areas, or if you have it like upside down or something crazy like that. Moving on to the panels again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm using some painter's tape and I'm going to start spraying down some red. And in this color scheme, the red areas are typically half of a panel, like half of the shoulder panel or half of the leg. Now, I'm using Evil Sunz Scarlet for the red. And again, when you're using these masking tape or painter's tape, you want to make sure that if you're going to be covering tape like I did, you need to make sure that you have at least an hour minimum that the paint has sat there and dried before you put on the tape. Typically, I would use anywhere from 3 to 5 hours to further emphasize that I'm not going to rip up any paint when I take off that masking tape. Once the red is done, you can move on to some lighter brass areas with Balthasar Gold. This is more for the vents and occasional Mechanicus symbols that are spread around the miniature. Now for one of the 2 longest steps that will take you the most amount of time when painting this miniature, and that is going to be the trim around the armor panels. So for this, I used Leadbelcher and did exactly what I just mentioned. Paint all of the trim on all of the armor panels. And also don't forget to hit up any of the silver pieces that you want on the arms or the body. And there's a lot of little dots on the armor panels. Make sure you hit them up with just a really small dab of silver so that way they pop out. With the silver done, go over it with some Nuln oil, but take care not to touch any of the panels themselves or any recess shading. And with that said, don't hit up any of those little silver dots like I was mentioning earlier. That's all going to be done later. So with that wash done, we're going to do some 3 colors real quick, and then we're going to do the final step. So first of those colors is going to be Kandor Blue, and we're going to do that little window that's on the top of the carapace. Then we're going to do Zandri Dust on all of the areas that are basically parchment, usually on the chest. Then Retributor Armor for any area that should be gold, such as this Imperial Aquila. The last step is a recessed shade of Agrax Earthshade around all the panels, all the grooves, etc. And this is going to be the second longest and pretty much the final step. Here you also want to take a very small dab of that wash and you're going to plop that down on every single little silver dot, and that's going to make that silver dot stand out a lot more when people look at the model. And that's it for the painting. Very simple scheme overall. I feel that, me personally, that knights, you don't really need any highlights for the exception of the skeleton because it would otherwise be largely one massive color. So if you're just looking to get some basic tabletop quality, this will be fine. Now, also when it comes to knights, they are awesome for decals, putting decals on, because they have a lot of flat areas and those decals are really good at breaking up those flat areas with some good imagery. If you don't know how to use any decals or using the decals with your knight set, if you want, you can take a look at a recent tutorial that I put up a week prior that goes over exactly how to transfer decals from the sheet onto your miniature. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was very useful to you. Until next video.